Before we actually get working with images in Photopea or Photoshop, if you're using that, I wanted to explain to you the difference between what's called a smart object and a raster graphic and why that's important for you to know. And then we'll also talk about the other kind of graphic that's called the vector graphic and how it differs from what's called the raster graphic. So all important information you understand. It's technical, but it's not at all difficult to understand. So let me get out of my title page here. I'm in a title page document. I'm going to go over to my pre-prepared Smart Objects page. You can see on my right I've got some groupings of different things in here. I'm on Smart Object right now. If I turn that off and on, I lose my text. Okay, let's add an image that I've downloaded. I'm going to go File, Open and Place. And that's what you're going to do is always open and place an image. You're not going to open it, but you're going to open and place. Click. You have to navigate to your computer where you've saved images. I know that I want this Amanda Gorman, the Guardian image. Okay, it's my first image. I'm going to double click it. It will open it and place it on my canvas. Notice it's placed it in the middle in this case. Okay, I'm going to say, okay, well, I want to move it. So I'm going to go to I'm going to accept first that it's placed it. Then I'm going to go to my Move tool, which is the first tool, the double arrow tool up here called the Move tool, shortcut letter V. Click on it, and now I can move this image. Okay, but it's too big. It's covering my text. So go to Transform Controls. It brings up the bounding box of that layer, the outside boundary of that layer. And you notice these little nodules here, these anchor points. I'm going to go to a corner, not a side, but a corner. It gives you a diagonal double arrow. I'm going to click and start to drag. Now, if I don't hold shift, I make her skinny or fat. I want to make sure I constrain the proportions. So as I'm dragging, hit shift and it'll keep the proportions correct. Let go of my left mouse button and then let go of shift. Do it in that order, otherwise you may by accident adjust the image so it's not constrained to its proportions. Okay, I'm going to place it there for the purpose of this demo. I'm going to accept what I've done. I've done what's called scaling. You might think of it as resizing. It's actually called scaling from a technical standpoint. Okay, whether you're in video or in photo. I'm going to turn off my transform controls. And I get rid of that bounding box and I get rid of the anchor points. Okay, so there's the image. Looks good, right? Because we start with a nice high quality, high resolution image when we download it. Now, I want to scale this down to an icon size. So how do I do it? Well, first thing you always do, let me just drag her layer. Notice when I added her image onto the canvas, it added her image to a separate layer. We'll get into that in the next tutorial. I'm going to drag her to the top just so it's convenient. When it adds this new layer with an image in it, you'll notice in the bottom right there's this little, it's very hard to see, I know, I can't really make this any bigger, I haven't found a way. There's a little box down the bottom right of the thumbnail of this layer. That tells me that this particular image on this layer is what's called a smart object. Okay, so placed images will be placed as a smart object. Okay, so what does that mean? What that's telling us is as a smart object is all of the pixel information for this image is still linked to the computer file that I have on my Mac or my PC. So this picture as a smart object has all of the picture information still linked to it on my computer. Why is that important? Well, I'm going to select that image, just move it back a bit. I'm going to make sure I'm on the right layer. I'm going to select my Move tool, which is the letter V. It's also how I scale and rotate. Make sure I select the right tool. Turn on my transform controls. If you're in Photoshop, the way to get into transform controls without having to turn the box on here is Control T for a PC or Command T for a Mac. Okay, now I'm going to go grab a corner, just like I did before. I'm going to start to scale it down, but see, I'm distorting it. I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to scale it way down, let go of my left click and then let go of shift and move her to the top And I'm going to say, yep, that's what I want. Click OK. Turn off my transform controls in Photopea. And it's a very small image. It looks okay, I guess. And that's because when you're in a smart object, because it is still linked to the original file on your computer, all of the pixel information is maintained, and Photopea can recreate the image when you're scaling it, so it'll look good. So what do I mean? How do I know that? Select the layer, select the move tool, turn on my transform controls, select the corner, hold shift, start to drag first, it's easier, and then hold shift, and I'm going to make it big. You notice that the quality of the picture still seems to be very good, just like it did before. There doesn't seem to be any change in the quality. Let me make it even bigger. Move tool, transform. I'm going to make it, say I don't want to use the top and bottom of this image. I'm going to make it significantly bigger. Say that was the part of the image that I wanted to use. Let me just scale it down a bit. Okay, say I wanted to position this image like this. Well, it still looks pretty good. Remember, I have scaled this down to an icon size, and now I've said, oh no, I actually want a large size of the image, so I've scaled it back up. And I would say that it looks pretty darn good, because we started with a high resolution image when we downloaded, and it fits this canvas. Okay? That's actually looking like it could be a graphic other than what the actual content says on the right. It looks like a graphic, right? It is a graphic. So that's Smart Object. It's maintained its quality when I scale down and scale back up because of the link to the original pixel information on your computer. Now you say, okay, well, sir, that's good. Let me just drag this over. Why don't we just leave it like that as a Smart Object? Because it maintains its quality. Well, watch what happens. If I try to edit this image other than scaling, rotating, and positioning, watch what happens. I'm going to select green color, nice bright green. I'm going to select the brush tool, shortcut letter B, and I'm going to paint on this picture for some reason. Oh, look, I've clicked and dragged, but look what's happened. The Smart Object must be rasterized first. Okay? So it says, you want me to rasterize it? I could click OK, or I can just cancel. You can click OK, but I just want to show you another way to do it. Is I can go to the layer, right click, and there's rasterize. If I had clicked OK up above previously, it would have done it automatically. I'm going to rasterize the layer now. Okay, so nothing really changed. It means it has a defined number of pixels in it. And because we started with a pretty high resolution image to start with, it looks good. Notice the bottom right of the thumbnail no longer has that little black square in it, telling me it's no longer a smart object. The link to the picture information has been lost, so that I can edit the image. Okay, let's scale this down like we did when it was a smart object. I'm on the layer, select the tool. I'm going to use the letter V this time. Takes me to the Move tool. Turn on my transform controls. There's my bounding box for this image. This shows me the outer edges of this layer. I'm going to select the corner, diagonal double arrow, start to drag it, and then hold shift to maintain its proportions, and I'm going to take it down, let go of left click, and then let go of shift, and drag it up. So now it's icon size like we had before as a smart object. Now, so that we are clear what we're doing here, let's refresh that we are now working with a raster graphic, not a smart object anymore. Okay, so there we go. Icon size, turn off transform controls. You say, it's really small. It looks a little fuzzy, but I can't really tell when it's that small. So I'd be hard pressed to say it looked any better or worse than the smart object version. Well, here's where you'll really see it. Right now, to get a raster graphic down to this size, it's had to throw away a lot of the pixels now in the image on this layer. So a lot of the pixels won't fit in this little area, so it's throwing them all out. So it fits as a small icon size. So what does that mean? Well, if we decide to change our mind, we go, oh, I don't really like the icon size. I actually want that half page kind of look. Turn on my transform controls, make sure I'm on the right layer, on the right tool, grab the corner, start to scale it and hold shift. Oh, I think you can clearly see the problem. Let me just scale it down just a hair, like that. Look at this. Clearly, huge quality difference. Because what's happened is when we scaled it way down, it is a raster graphic, which consists of pixels. It had to throw a lot of them out. And then when we scaled it back up, because we changed our mind in the scale that we wanted of the image, it didn't have the pixels anymore in that image on this layer. It's no longer linked to the original file. So the quality is unacceptable. It's blurry. And in fact, if I scale it up even more, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do this. You can start to see what are called the pixels. I'll just put it in the middle here. The pixels are these squares. Okay, an array of pixels there makes up the image. An array of pixels is called a raster of pixels. And those square pixels are all different colors. And it's the eye that is fooled into believing all those little squares are actually one image. That's what pixels are. All these little squares, you see. So we've got to make sure that when we're scaling things, that first of all, we start with a high quality image. And second of all, don't make any drastic scaling changes. Certainly not as a raster graphic, because this is what can happen to you. Is you can actually deteriorate the image to the point where it's no longer usable. So that if you were doing this in a project, you'd lose marks for that. Okay? So now what do I want to show you next? Well, let me just turn that off. And I'm going to turn off raster graphics. I'm going to turn on what's called vector graphics. What are vector graphics? Well, going back to an image of a raster graphic is made up of pixels. A vector graphic is mathematically created. So what are vector graphics? Texts and shapes, like we see here on the left. These are mathematically generated by the program when you make them. And we'll get into how to make these things in a later tutorial. So what does that mean? It means it's not a smart object, and it also means it's not made of pixels. So let me go into my vector graphic layers here. I'm going to go to my letter E down here. I'm going to turn off my red shape. I'm going to take that letter E. I'm on the right layer. I always select the right layer first, then select the tool, and then do the modification you want to make. Okay, so select my tool. Oops, somehow I got off the letter E layer. Oh, it's locked. I'm going to turn the little lock off here. There we go. And click on that layer. Oh, the whole vector graphics is locked. There we go, the whole group. Select it. Now I can move it. And you'll have issues like this. That's okay. So there's the letter E. Now what I'm going to do is scale it. Go to the Move tool. Turn on my transform controls. And I'm going to scale this down to an icon size. I'll stop there. Turn off transform controls. Hey, that looks still pretty good. It looks as good as any of these letters down here on the right. Okay, so it looks good. Okay, but where's the real test is when we scale it way up. So let's go to transform controls, turn it on. Make sure we're on the E layer. Select your tool. Go to the corner. Click. Drag. Hold shift. Let go. Say. Accept what you've done. There you go. Look at how nice and rounded that still is. No quality loss whatsoever, because every time you change this vector graphic, the mathematics is being done in the background. And it's regenerated to the point where it's exactly the same quality it was when it was tiny or huge. You could have a vector graphic that could fill the icon of your phone all the way up to, say, a billboard at the side of the street. Vector graphics can be scaled to any size and maintain their qualities versus raster graphics, which are limited by the number of pixels it has when you bring it into the program. Okay, let's make it even bigger. Select the layer, select the tool, turn on transform, grab a corner, drag, hold shift. Let's make it huge. There we go. Select what I did. I can still move it. Look at that. Nicely rounded. No jaggedy edges at all, like we had with the graphic here, the raster graphic. See the difference in the quality is huge. Okay, so this vector graphic maintains its quality. Okay, let me turn off the letter E. Let me turn on my shape. Let's do the same thing. So shapes and texts are both vector graphics. Okay, select the layer, red circle, select the tool, turn on my transform, grab a corner, start to transform it, hold shift, bring it down to an icon size, accept what you did, turn off the transform controls. See that blue outline? That's just because I've got that particular layer selected. I'm just going to click off of it. The blue is gone. Hey, it looks good. I can't really tell if it looks jaggedy or anything when it's that small. Let's make it big. Let's go to the shape layer, go to the tool, turn on transform controls. Let's really scale this up now and see if we lose the quality. Make it huge. Make it even larger. Scale it up. Nice. Then I'm going to move it down. So, oh, this is looking like something you could use too. Look at how quickly you can create things that you can actually see maybe you'd use. So I'll just position it like that. I'll accept my scaling of the image. I'll turn off the transform controls. I'll deselect that layer, select a different layer, gets rid of the blue. And look at that. Nice curved edge. No pixelization again. Remember, we're comparing it to that. Look at how bad that is, right? So, vector graphics can be scaled as many times as you want up and down as long as they are maintained as a vector graphic. If for some reason you had to make this into a rasterized graphic to edit it in some way, you'd have to right click and rasterize it. Okay, watch what happens now. Move tool, transform controls. I've now said I'm going to go command minus just to make my document a little smaller. Grab a corner, start to drag it. I'm going to make it really small. I'm going to drag it back onto the canvas. Make it really small. Again, now it's a rasterized shape because I rasterized it. Make it even smaller. So there's the icon size. So yep, that's what I want. You notice that the E is on a white page here, background on the thumbnail. This now has a transparent background. That tells me that on this shape, that shape is actually rasterized now. Okay, hard to tell. You can start to see a bit of jaggedy. Look at that. I can actually see the jaggedies. Turn on transform control, grab the corner, drag it out, hold shift. Oh my God, look at the difference. Because I took what started as a vector graphic, I rasterized it to make it now a pixel graphic. And now when I scale it, you get that problem again that you had like so. So the bottom line is when you add an image initially, it adds it as a smart object, which you can scale up and down. But don't go too extreme, because it maintains the link to the original picture information on your computer, and it can retrieve pixels as it needs them. You need to rasterize an image in order to edit it with things such as brushes or different effects. So in order to edit them, you have to rasterize them. And again, to rasterize something, you right-click and you select rasterize right in the middle there. Once it's been rasterized, scaling becomes an issue. You've got to be very careful not to be extreme with your scaling. You can make slight adjustments, not big adjustments, or you'll lose pixel quality. And it'll start to pixelate, that's what that edge is, called pixelation. And for vector graphics, you can scale them up and down, as big and small as you want, as many times as you want without any quality loss. Okay? But if for some reason you did rasterize a vector graphic, then you're right back to as if it was an image, and then scaling becomes a problem. So that's the difference between a smart object, a rasterized image, a raster graphic, and a vector graphic, which is mathematically created by the program that can be fully scaled as many times as you want without any quality loss.